Hello, friends and neighbors. Thank you for joining us today for the poem of the day on Monday, August the 4th, 2025. We're at the start of the new week, and the poem today is going to be shorter than the last few poems that we've had. It's just one stanza long, and it's a poem from Lucille Clifton, who is an American poet who lived from 1936 to 2010. This poem is called Won't You Celebrate With Me, and it's from 1993. Won't you celebrate with me what I have shaped into a kind of life? I had no model, born in Babylon, both non white and woman. What did I see to be except myself? I made it up here on this bridge between starshine and clay, my one hand holding tight, my other hand. Come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. So, when I did some background reading on Lucille Clifton, I read that she was basically born, well, not born, but grew up in a church, and not literally, but more in the sense that we talked about with James Baldwin, where she was around churches and church services and congregations and the Bible and preaching a lot as a young person. And another thing that I read that stuck out was that a lot of her style, at least on the page, some irregular line lengths, some lack of rhyme, characteristically eschewing punctuation in certain places where it would typically be uh, not capitalizing proper nouns, primarily not capitalizing I as a way of placing all pronouns sort of on the same level of significance and authority. I'm told this word does not appear in her poem, but I'm told that the one word that she did consistently capitalize was story. And that was her way of thinking that she was not speaking just for herself, but was speaking for people who lived with these kind of terrible stories of American trauma, and that she wrote trying to redeem those and offer some hope, but not in a saccharine way. She often said at her poetry readings, I come to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. So she thought of herself, I think, as a poet, as someone who was giving a voice to the voiceless, but also who was occasioning the confrontation between people who were not aware of or were ignoring certain injustices and certain traumas that other people, their neighbors, bore. And she was trying to familiarize themselves with that, make them confront that and become part of the fight that was there. So within this poem, there's not really a lot of heavy, dense symbolism as we might find in something like the metaphysical poets. But I was struck right away how much the reading of the poem can change and how much the impact of certain lines can change if you read it again, not obeying the punctuation per se, but the way you're supposed to not read a poem, which is to pause at the end of each line. It seems to um, create as verses specific units that give the poem a different meaning. So I'm looking, for example, at the third line, and I'll just read the first three, and then I'll read the third again in isolation. So here's the first three together. Won't you celebrate with me what I have shaped into a kind of life? I had no model. Now listen if we read just the third line. A kind of life? I had no model. I think what happens there is it kind of extracts her specific struggle from something that's individual into something that is speaking for a larger group of people, as she was trying to do by lowercasing the I there. Similarly, I think it's interesting to look at, this is maybe the seventh line. Again, I'm going to read these lines, obeying the punctuation, and then we'll isolate one. So she says, what did I see to be except myself? I made it up here on this bridge between starshine and clay. Um, I like it. I made it up is isolated as its own line, and letting that sit as its own line makes me focus on the it and the indeterminacy of the it there. I made it up. Um, in the context of the previous line, we know that the it refers to herself, but I think it can also here then refer to a larger story. Not just who you are, but the story that you tell then about yourself. The last example of this that I want to look at is about 5 lines from the end. My one hand holding tight my other hand. Come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. So the fourth line from the bottom has a caesura in it by the way of a semicolon. So it separates those two thoughts. The two thoughts are my one hand holding tight my other hand, semicolon. Come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. And if we just isolate that fourth to last line, I think there's something really interesting there. So my one hand holding tight, my other hand, come celebrate. If we read that alone, my other hand, come celebrate. It's no longer her one hand holding the other hand tight, but it's almost as though she's addressing her other hand and beckoning for it to come and join in this celebration. And so what that's doing is it's taking her other hand and literally offering it as belonging to a stranger. Your hand is my other hand. It would be another way to put that. And I think that's a really interesting thing that comes out of isolating specific lines of this poem. So that's just some thoughts today on Lucille Clifton's Won't You Celebrate With Me. As usual, there's a lot more that we could say in here. There's allusions to Babylon, as I mentioned previously. I did briefly mention Clifton's situation, kind of speaking for other people in her salient identity categories as a non-white woman, but there's more I think that could be said about that and the way that she phrases that in this poem. But that's all I want to say for today with that, and I hope it gives you some things to think about and that you enjoyed the poem. Peace be with you all.